Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Esa Mikkola and I wanted to share you my experience in how to become a better musician, producer, mixing and mastering engineer, sound engineer, or what have you. Here is a list of things which I came up. They are not in any specific order because I think they are all as important in this whole process. I will go through them one by one and explain why they are important in my opinion and what I did personally to improve myself in each one. So the first topic is music history, and there are many benefits in studying music history. First, you should find some music history books in your own language depending where you live. I live in Finland, so I have 2 books in Finnish language. These are from the 70s, so they're really old, but I found that to be a great thing. Everything was really well made and there was hundreds of examples from different countries all over the world, which I had never heard before, and I would recommend finding older books if possible, but I'm sure modern books work too. So the first benefit is that you get a lot of general knowledge how music history evolved. There's history of musical notation, there's history of music theory, and these books mention hundreds of composers and classical pieces and pieces from many other genres of music. And listening to all of those was really important. And the key thing for me was to go to YouTube or Google and find every single musical example that was mentioned in this book while I was reading it. The other one has 300 pages, the other one has 250, and there was hundreds and hundreds of examples of music, but I still went and I listened every single one that I could find. Even if it takes 2 hours to listen a whole opera, I still did it. And most of the time I paid attention to what I was listening to. And the thing was that only after maybe 2 years after I did all this, because it took a long time to go through all of these books and examples and take the time to listen every day for a couple hours. Only after a couple years after doing that, I noticed a clear difference that my ears got better. I noticed that the ear training happened automatically while I was going through these books. And that's because the classical music that you listen to is composed with all the music theory rules and it's so well made. And sometimes there are 3-4 layers of harmonies playing together, different instrument groups playing different melodies at the same time, so they create this nice harmony. So what I found is that when you listen to a rap beat or some more simple pop music beat, you start to hear if there are any mistakes while you are producing, or you hear what someone else did. You start to hear little dissonances between a bass line or a synthesizer. And that's really what I found is super helpful after taking the time to study all the history and listening all the examples. The second thing is music theory. And I know there are a lot of producers and artists, musicians out there who never studied much music theory and they still became successful. So of course it's not something you have to do. But I found it to be very helpful because you learn all the basics of rhythm, melody and harmony. You learn all the basic chords and chord progressions, and also you can learn about songs, like famous songs, which use a certain chord progression, and you can find it from that song, and that also gives you some information how they can be used. Then you learn intervals, scales and keys. All the basic things about theory. Also, you can do a lot of exercises while you study. Of course, there are many ways to study music theory. I found a teacher online and I took private lessons for about a year. It was about $25 per hour. The teacher recommended me a music theory book. It's a big book, 250 pages. And we went through this whole book in that 1 year, and I did all the exercises at home, and I found that to be super helpful in writing music, composing, and analyzing some beats or other music that gets sent to me. I can talk in the right terms with other musicians, producers who studied music theory. Next is ear training. And in my experience, you can train your ears by listening to a lot of music, for example, classical music. And then you can find some exercises and courses online. And the third thing is that when you mix a lot of songs for different artists, you automatically get ear training when you compare thousands of times how a specific track or song sounded before adding a plugin and after adding a plugin. So you do these little comparisons thousands of times, tens of thousands of times when you mix hundreds of songs, and your ears slowly get better. And I think the big benefits that you get from all this is that when you listen to rap beats or pop beats that someone produced, or when you're writing music with different people or by yourself, you start to notice small mistakes or like dissonances between, for example, bass line and some synthesizer you added or someone else added. And you notice these little things, and then you can easily change the notes so that they create a nice harmony and not a dissonance. And the other benefit is that when you're recording or mixing a vocal track, you start to hear better the small tuning and timing issues in the track. So when you're recording, you just keep taking new takes, and you can tell the artist to try to be more precise with timing, and then you get better results when you record tracks which are perfectly on time and also in tune. And when you're mixing, you can start hearing small timing issues in instruments or vocals, and you can fix them when you're mixing. And next is playing an instrument. And I've been playing guitar, keyboards, drums and bass already 25 years, even more. And personally, I find it very helpful because all the time when you play an instrument, you also do ear training, you do music theory, and you do composing and writing at the same time, because you play songs from other bands and you come up with your own things with the instrument, and you tune it if it's a guitar, and you play different rhythms, intervals, chords, all these things. And maybe if you play guitar solos, you have to learn scales and keys so you can play a guitar solo in the right key over the background. And all this helps in the overall progress to become a better musician. And also it helps if someone asks you to play an instrument track for a song, so you can easily play it. And then if you mix songs and you already know how certain instruments need to sound because you play it yourself, it also helps in the mixing. So the fifth thing is networking. And I found this be also very important for many reasons. When you start networking with artists and producers and whoever you can find, you get more songs to mix, master, produce. You can get recording jobs, you can help them in anything they need. And all this will help you to get more work, get more practice, get more ear training, and to get contacts which might be useful in the future. And you might get information about new mixing plugins, new songs that you should be listening to. And if you do a good job with the artists, they might tell others about you, and you will get more work through that. And of course, the more you network, the more you work with artists, you might get lucky and you end up working with artists who becomes successful. Also, it's not so much about luck. You can also try to look for artists who has a lot of potential and stick with them and help them as much as you can. And if you notice that an artist is in such level that they cannot easily improve from that, then you might not work with them as much and focus on those artists that has the most potential. So next is free work and paid work. I noticed that in the beginning, when I started learning mixing and mastering, producing, all these things, it's great to get free work from online forums and wherever you can find, and just mix a lot of songs for different artists for free or for very, very little amounts of money. So you can get the experience and you can learn all the basics and you can get better. But at a certain point, I started noticing that it takes a long time to mix a song. And when you don't get paid, it starts to feel like you're kind of wasting your time because you're not getting anything from it. So at that point, I would put a price for that time. But if you notice that there is an artist or band which has a huge potential and you can see that it can go somewhere and it can bring you a future income, then I would work for free for that project and see where it goes and what are the results. And it's a good advice that if you already know how to mix a song fairly well and you get good results constantly, you shouldn't do those for free anymore because you seem to be confident in your mixing skills and or recording skills or whatever it may be. And at that point, I would put a price for that work. And next is YouTube. YouTube is such a great thing nowadays. You can study tutorials, courses, interviews. You can study anything basically. And I've gone through a lot of channels and huge amount of content over these years. But I ended up with just the 5 channels which I think are the most important. And I will explain why. First is Pensado's place. And they have done about 500 or more interviews with all kinds of famous mixing engineers, mastering engineers, producers, artists, and many other people, studio owners. And they have such a great content. I probably watched at least the first 300 episodes, all the interviews, and I paid attention. I made notes of plugins which they mentioned for mixing, or if they mentioned the book, I found the book and I read it. And in general, you get great information about being a mixing engineer, mastering engineer, producer, and how these people became successful. And also Dave Pensado, who holds the Pensado's place, he gives a great tutorial for each episode. And from the earliest episodes, you can get really great tips and tricks for your mixing, and you can use them in your own mix. And also, you can't find all the earliest Pensado's Place episodes from YouTube, so you have to find them from Google. I'm sure they are still up somewhere, but I would recommend also watching the earliest episode. There's some really great content. And next is Produce Like a Pro. And it's a channel for American producer called Warren Hewart, and his channel is full of practical, great information about recording, microphones, mixing, mastering, producing, just about anything about music. And I would definitely recommend watching basically all of his videos from the beginning of the channel. There's some really great content and it helped me also a lot to become better. Next is Rick Beato. I found his channel maybe 2-3 years ago when it was still kind of small. Now it has millions of subscribers on YouTube, and he's a musical teacher also, so he can really explain basic and advanced music theory in a great way. And also he does a lot of song analysis, and there's huge amount of great content about producing and about anything in music, and I would definitely recommend watching a lot of his videos. Then next is this Hollywood movie composer whose nickname is Junkie XL. And I found his channel also maybe 2 years ago, and that was a great find. He has composed a lot of Hollywood movie soundtracks, and in his videos he goes through some of his soundtracks, even track by track, and he shows all his plugins and synthesizers, virtual instruments, just anything you can want to know about it. And such a great source of information, especially if you want to compose any music for film. Also, he goes through his collection of synthesizers, which is huge, and you can get great overview of different synthesizers over the years. That has been done by many manufacturers. And also he has a big wall of analog synthesizers, and he also makes a long demo using that analog synthesizer. And the last one is Rennie Music and Business. The channel is called Steve Rennie, and he's a music manager from Los Angeles, I think. And I found this channel already about 7 years ago, and at that time he was posting a great course in music business. And I think you can still find a lot of episodes from that, or at least something similar from the channel. Also, there's a lot of interviews with people from labels and from other places, and I think you have to become a member to get all the best content nowadays, but you can still get a lot of free information, and that's great if you don't know anything about music business and labels and people who work in labels and what they do there. Because if you want to be a successful artist, you have to know about music business. And also one of the first things is that you should find people around you and build a team. And if you don't know what those team players are and what they should be doing, you should definitely watch his videos to get overall understanding about music business and labels and what kind of team you need around you. And then there are private lessons and public courses that you can take. For example, I explained previously that I studied music theory by taking private lessons. And that happened because I found a great teacher online with a relatively cheap price. And I took private lessons to study all the basic music theory. So that was a great thing. And also you could find a great teacher to study an instrument or anything else. And also I found a great course which I could take with a pretty cheap price in one of the greatest music universities here in Finland. And it was a music producing and mixing course. And I learned so much from that because the teacher was one of the best mixers here in Finland. So I learned so much there, and I got to visit a lot of different studios around and get to see full recording day in a studio and all kinds of other things. So if you can find anything similar, I think that's a really great thing. Next is hard work, because you can't say enough about hard work, but it's really true that you have to study every day to get better. And especially in the beginning, I remember I was listening to interviews while going to work, even at work, and driving a car somewhere. I was listening to some interview, paying attention, and I was mixing songs whenever I could find them from artists. I was trying different mixing plugins, comparing what they do, like before the plugin, after plugin. It's a lot of hard work, but that's really the only way how you can get better. And definitely after you do all that work, after some years, you will appreciate it and you will realize that it was definitely worth it to do all that work. So then there is time management, and I just wanted to put that on the list because I felt like there's so much to learn and you have to spend a lot of time listening to all the interviews and all the music examples and everything to get better. So at least I did, so that I was listening while driving, or if I'm in the bus or train, or you can listen when you're walking. Also when you are doing your other job, like if you have a day job as a programmer like me, you can listen music or interviews during the work. And if anyone reaches out to you for mixing, mastering, producing, or anything else, you should answer them as quickly as you can. Like if you see email coming up, you can quickly answer from your phone if you're walking, or even if you're working. It doesn't take that much time. Otherwise, these people might find another mixer or producer, and work with them. And now I found that if you do all the things that I mentioned before, you might feel that you're lucky, but I think more of it is that you just worked so hard that you found the contacts that you need to kind of feel lucky. But you might get to work with artists who later becomes successful, or maybe some artist knows someone else who is already famous or is becoming famous, and maybe you can connect yourself through this artist to another artist and you get to work with them, and maybe that will bring you something. Or you might find other contacts from labels or anywhere else which might help you, and you might be part of a team producing songs, or you might compose songs yourself and you might get them to a company who does sync licensing for TV, movies, advertisements. Maybe your song gets licensed to a TV, movie or advertisement by a big company or even a smaller company, but it might still bring you some visibility, and then you can add all those successes to your portfolio, and that way you can get even more work later. So thanks for watching. That was my list of how to become better musician, producer, mixing, mastering engineer, sound engineer, or what have you. I shared my experiences and how I became better in those things. I would be happy to hear if that helped you. Of course, it's a long process, but I would like to hear what you think about it, and leave a comment, subscribe if you want, and I will be interested to hear your opinions, and see you in the next video.